Hey guys, and welcome to today's It's Not About the Money podcast episode. I have another very exciting guest for you today, talking about the subject of financial freedom. Like, why is it that most people never achieve financial freedom and how you can? And I've got guest Jason Graystone with me today. Jason and I met on a ski trip with Daniel Priestley earlier this year. And Jason has just published his book called Always Free. And I just couldn't resist having him on the show to talk about his experience of financial freedom. We're going to be diving into some investing conversations, all the good stuff today. So welcome to the show, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff, and I love the message in your podcast. So I'm excited to share or contribute to that in some way. So
Thank
yeah.
you so much. And Jason, for those people who haven't come across your work before, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I'm primarily an investor, and my investments range from all types of passive to really high speculation investments. And I've been doing that since I was 22 years old. I now live on a farm out in West Sussex in the UK, and I spend my days pottering around and trying to help as many people achieve what I believe to be true freedom via educating them on, what I did when I was in my early 20s, which is everything from money mindset stuff to investing to speculation stuff, and also how to enjoy your life as well at the same time, and be content in life, because it seems like there's an epidemic where people don't quite, they chase they don't know what they're chasing for. So I think that's an important piece of it, which
That is so
seems to
true.
be going down really well. So I just educate people on all of that stuff, and I guess I'm a YouTuber. I guess that's the new term for it.
I love how you're like, I just educate people. And it's like, Jason has like 500,000 YouTube subscribers. One of his videos has reached over like a crazy million number of views, like 7.5 million views on his trading videos. And I'll link all these in the show notes. But I just want to start off with that piece, Jason, around like you were a really young age when you went into this journey of learning about money. And I know that you have a lot of this captured in your book, Always Free. And I would love to just start with that because that's a really young age to even go into those conversations.
Hmm.
What was it that led you into those pieces at such a young age?
They say that your character's shaped by the age of 7. And I've also, I'm a strong believer that you value most what you perceive to be missing most in those 7 years, in your childhood.
Mm.
And for me, my earliest memories, my dad had left before I was born. It was me and my mum on a council estate. And my earliest memories were, bailiffs knocking at the door for the electricity money, and we couldn't pay the electricity. We had to hide behind the sofa to avoid them like seeing that we were in. And these are my earliest memories. And I guess where it all stemmed from was this yearning for security. That's basically all I wanted. I just wanted stability, security, and just a balanced life. Like I didn't want any chaos. I wanted, I just wanted security. And obviously I didn't know money was a complementary component to security, but I subconsciously navigated my way through life using money, I guess, in a way to provide more security. So security and freedom just became my highest values, to the point where, it's a bit obsessive. Like I've got a thing today where I just hate losing things and appreciate the connection between money and security. And that was freedom. And that was every Friday on our council estate. At the block of our flat, there were these steps that led up to the doors that go up the stairs, and kind of it was like a mother's meeting. Everyone used to congregate on these steps and talk about the week. And on a summer's evening, they'd be moaning about. And I used to pick up on just negative views on money. It was just like, my boss is evil, or my boss is this, that, and the other, or money's evil, like that kind of language. And I wasn't like trying to pick up on it, but the reason I picked up on it so much is because at 7:30 every Friday, this guy called Roy used to come down. He'd collect everyone's money and go and do a syndicate lottery, And then for the next 10 minutes, all they would talk about is how amazing their life would be if they won the lottery and what they'd spend it on. And I just remember thinking, that's weird. You just, do you like it or do you hate it? What, is it good or bad? And I just remember thinking it was strange. And then coincidentally that year, leading up to my 15th birthday, I wanted this BMX bike so much. It was a Mongoose Sniper, this chrome BMX from this place called Pearson's. Now I photocopied the brochure and put like photocopies all around our flat so that my mum would get the hint. And she said, look, we can't afford the bike, but we'll pay half on your birthday if somehow you can raise the other half. And I was just like, okay, that's a deal. So we had this triangular green on the estate where everyone parked their cars. I just thought, right, I'm going to go and wash the car for this lady called Lynn. She paid me £5 plus £2 tip. So I had £7. And then that night I was in my room and my friend was there and he was like, I can help you if you want. And I was like, I don't really want to pay you. But anyway, my stepdad came in my room and he said, do you want anything from the shop? I gave him everything I'd earned that day to get another bucket and sponge. And then the next day we washed 4 cars. And then within 4 weeks, I had 4 friends washing cars and I wasn't washing cars. All I was doing was collecting the money and booking in the next one for next week. And it was enjoyment. And I remember feeling like I'd discovered fire at that point. It was like, so if you use money like this, it actually allows you to still get what you want. You might have to sacrifice some immediate gratification, but you still get what you want and you're doing less of the things you don't want to do, and you can really have a great time and get the things you want. And it wasn't like, I wasn't Warren Buffett, but I just remember thinking, this must be why people are unhappy with money. They just can't be using it properly. They can't use it properly. So those two things just really stuck with me. And then when I went into the work life, I just took that memory, those principles, that philosophy around money into everything I did. So going back to your question, how I really got into it was, one, I just appreciated and valued how money helps find security. That was driven by voids in my childhood. And then when I was 22, I found out I was going to have our first baby, and I felt like a failure. I was like, I'm not ready. I don't think I could have ever been ready for that news. But 22, I just did not want what I had for him. I felt like I was no better than my dad, even though I was still there. But that just really put a rocket up my backside to put a plan in place. And that's when I started projecting numbers, becoming serious about what yields I was getting, ever higher degrees of speculative investments, and how I could implement that, and what effect that would have on my returns, and how short a time horizon I could replace my income, all this stuff. I just got really granular about the numbers. And then that just led me on this journey of like, how can I increase my returns? How can I put a portion here and then a bit of a portion here, a bit of a portion here, and then like accelerate this thing. And that's still where I am today. Still going.
So many lessons in that. I love how, like, at such a young age, you're like just delegating out the car washing to your friends so you could just take the money in and delegate all the tasks out. Like, it's such an important lesson, isn't it, about sticking to things that you're good at and that you enjoy, and, working
Definitely.
alongside other people. I love that. I'm already thinking of my 14-year-old and thinking he would probably do the same.
Right. I
He'd have
can't,
the same.
maybe it was an accident, maybe it was luck, but something made me, give away all that money on that first day.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was that made me realize that just what you could do, what was achievable.
Yeah.
I feel lucky that I did that. It was the right place, right time. Everything just worked out.
How do you think? Because when I think about freedom, the word freedom, for me, it sits in two ways. It's the emotional freedom away from stress, anxiety, fear, shame, guilt, judgment, all of those emotions. And then it's also the freedom towards more of the practical wealth building and, being able to live an enriched life. And when you were sharing that story about bailiffs knocking on your door and you having to hide behind the couch, like, what do you think that impact had on you emotionally when you think about the word freedom?
Yeah, I think they say the apple never falls too far from the tree. So I think when you're impressionable as a kid, you either accept that that's the way it is, or you want the polar opposite of that. So like some people could just go along and go, oh yeah, money's evil. My mum said it's evil. You see it with all sorts of problems in the world. Racism, if the parent says, well, there's racists out there, well, then you take into the world, oh, okay, it's a racist world, right? But
Yeah.
there's people that don't believe in racism. There's people that just choose to, so the same with money. And it's like money's evil. Okay, money's evil. Well, I didn't want that. I looked at the situation and I guess I just didn't, I wanted everything the opposite to the situation we were in. I think that set my mindset for, I just wanted security, right? So I think what holds a lot of people back is, one, that they heard a lot of negative talk around money. Maybe it was that thing that happened where he come and got the lottery ticket. Maybe that's where I saw well, hang on a minute, money's got two sides, and it's how you use it. And it's the same, like,
Mhm.
trading, people ask me all the time, is trading gambling and stuff like that, right? But you go to the casino and you see everyone just having a laugh on the fruit machines and doing the roulette table, and they're losing money, right? But if you look over at the tournament table, the semi-finals, every night it's the same players. So how are they getting a spot at that semi-final every night? Like, and it's because the approach, it's a decision to approach it differently. You either approach it as a gambler or you approach it as a professional. And I think that mindset is the differentiator. And I guess I approached money and how I use money as a tool, rather than seeing it as this thing that was like controlling me.
Mm.
Kind of felt like I was controlling it rather than it controlling me.
Yeah. And were
So
you
yeah, I guess that was my mindset. But mindset holds people back because of that. And but also just anything negative. Like, if you want freedom, you just mentioned emotional freedom and just living a prosperous life. Really, the financial element is a tiny piece of it. Because if you are who you want to be and you're not living in someone's expectation, or you're not trying to please and appease mum and dad, or you're not taking advice from people who are not where you want to go, or anything like that, and then you can take that and then build an income or a vocation or a job or a business that is an extension of you, a congruent extension of you, then that's life. Like, you don't then subordinate to this idea of retirement or one day I'm going to stop work. You just want to live, and if you can be paid to do what you would love to do anyway, then great. And then the financial element is just how you manage the income so that you can stop if you need to. One day you might need to. Your health might go downhill or deteriorate, or a loved one might become ill, and you need to look after them. But the mental freedoms and the mobility freedoms on how you live and walk the earth, those are the two most important ones. Because if you can do
yeah.
that, you're happy anyway. But you're not trying to escape your job.
I think that I know you talk about this in your book about like the importance of mindset. And I think that that mental side is so important. And I guess I'm a bit curious, and let me know if you're not happy to talk about this pathway, Jason. But when I think about when you mentioned about growing up without a father, did you have any father influence in your life, or was it?
My earliest experience up to the age of about 6 or 7, where my mum met my stepdad, and I had a stepdad who raised me until I was an adult. But before that, my mum was trying to make ends meet. She'd work at like taxi ranks and things like that. And she would drop me at this house owned by a guy called Joey Pyle and Shirley Pyle. On the outside, they look like a lovely couple, but it turns out that Joey's one of the most renowned gangster criminals in London. And he was like Ronnie Cray's best man. And I would get shut in this room with their dogs and Shirley. And then in the back of the house, you could just hear plates smashing, arguing, screaming, all these gangsters around, meeting. It was like a meeting hub. And then I looked, like, years later, I typed in Joey Pyle's funeral. And I mean, you look at the thing on YouTube, the whole road, it's like some massive gangsters died. This whole road's full of
Oh,
people. And I thought, well, no wonder. I had no one to look up to, no kind of inspirational peers or anything like that. And then my stepdad, he was just an 18-year-old kid. He was 18 when he met my mum. So I mean, what I've got a
yeah,
lot of respect for an 18-year-old who would stick round with a mum with a 6-year-old. But you
yeah,
know, he's a kid himself. My son is 20, so I
yeah. It's
couldn't I
crazy
couldn't
when you become
imagine
a
it.
parent, isn't it? And you look back and think, about how our parents managed that. And, I guess for your mom, that's a huge financial responsibility to have to fend for herself and for her son.
For sure, yeah. I mean, it would. They just. My stepdad was an electrician. And he just provided. He provided for the family till I moved
Mm.
out.
And do you think that work ethic that you observe then with your mum, having to be the sole breadwinner, and then with your stepdad being an electricians are generally like very hardworking people, right? Like they're out at 7 in the morning and they're out at, back at 7 at night. Do you think that had an impact on how you feel about freedom today?
I don't. And that is purely because maybe the work ethic. I used to get up when I was 14 and go and do a Saturday with him. And I would work and work. But I feel like that drive was in me. I don't feel like I was influenced into it any way. And the reason I say that is because I've got two kids. One is more driven than the other to work. And I think we're just brought up to diversify. So like me and my wife are polar opposites. I'm good at stuff that she's crap at, and she's good at stuff that I'm crap at, and that's why it's amazing. And the same with the kids. If you've got two kids, they're normally polar opposites of each other. One will
Yeah.
be driven one way, and one will be like empathetic, compassionate. The kind of the nurturing one. And you see that throughout. And I was an only child until I was like 8, and then my mum had kids with my stepdad. But I think maybe I just had that. Maybe I had the spark from my real dad. Maybe there was a genetic there that was because he was an entrepreneur. He just built a a window cleaning business where he only employed drug addicts, and then he would get the drug addicts to steal from houses and then give them their fix when he gave them the jewelry to sell. So, he was an entrepreneur, but using it for the bad. And I guess maybe I had that in me. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely am grateful that I was pushed and allowed to go and work on those early 6 a.m. mornings on a Saturday. But when I was there, I just felt like I enjoy this. It wasn't like I was going to earn some money. I wanted to do it. And I look at some other kids and they don't want to do it. They want the easy things. I don't know. I think a lot of it was in me, as I say, all driven from that desire for security in some way.
Yeah. And what did you have to sacrifice or give up to achieve that freedom so early? Because I know you mentioned about like there's some downsides of being like that with money and having that kind of ethic. What did you have to give up, or what did you have to sacrifice to achieve that so early?
Yeah. So I mean, I when we found out I was going to have my first son, I was 22, and that's really where it began. And I really put my back against the wall. I basically said, look, I need to be able to control my income. So I handed in my notice. It was Christmas. We'd just moved into a bigger house to fit, my new baby in, and we took on a bigger house, and it was Christmas time. So you're paying out financially. It's like a tough time when you're 22. I remember just ringing up the office for the business that I work for, the company that I work for, and saying that I'm going to go out on my own. I need to do something on my own. And it was kind of a back against the wall moment. And I thought that I'd go back in January and they'd give me like a work your notice kind of thing. But I think they felt a little bit threatened that I was going to go and take the customers and all that, which I did. And because that's the only way you start a business. I think people were deluded. But anyway, I did that. But in the January, they basically said you can leave in 3 days. So I had 3 days. So it was like, I've got to make this work. So I threw everything into, starting to build a business and starting to earn some money and because a lot of that was at home, I spent a long time with my first son. I was there for him a lot. When the second son came along, that was when it was starting to get hard. And that was like 3 years after that. And that's like, I hardly ever saw him. Really never, I was never home because I was really trying to make things work. And I guess the toughest time was when I went into trading. That was the last phase so I was investing, I was stock investing, I was doing really well. I had some angel investments. I was looking at real estate investment trusts and ETFs and index funds. And I had this really nice portfolio. But when I started the business, what I started the business for was to pay myself as much money as possible so I could put it into my pot and then like become financially free. So you're basically abusing the business. You're using it as a tool. So as the business grew and we needed a new manager and I couldn't quite afford a manager, and then things start breaking and you're like, oh, it was like a sinking boat that I knew was going to sink, but when do you get off? So I thought I need something just a bit higher speculation so I can increase. I needed about another 4% per year, basically to match my living costs from my portfolio. And
Mhm.
I started looking at higher speculative stuff. So I went into online poker first, and then I went into options trading. And then after blowing about 40 grand in the financial markets, I learned a lot of lessons and finally became good about 3 years after that. So when I was in my late 20s, about 29, or just before my 30th birthday, I'd matched my income from swing, like the swing trading piece was the last piece in the puzzle. And then I just ditched everything. I just walked off the ship. The ship sank,
So
and I've never looked back. So
what was that business that you had at that time?
it was a electrical engineering business. So we used to design control systems,
And you
just
were
like the
how
one in
much of
Jersey that I was
your
telling you about before here.
Oh, yeah, so Jason and I were just saying before we started recording that we actually both moved to Jersey in the same year, like in 2010. And we lived here for 4 years. Jason, you said that you were here for, was it nine,
Nine
nine
months.
months? Yeah,
9 months. Yeah, yeah.
of toing and froing backwards and forwards. We actually lived in Jersey for the whole time, but yeah, very interesting the connection there. And so, how much of your revenue were you pulling out of the business and investing at that time?
Oh, at least 50% of the profits. My lifestyle costs. This is another key. I'd already rationalized my lifestyle costs to the bare minimum. Because the freedom was the goal. It wasn't like have all the nice things and keep up with the Joneses and have two cars. It was really just how can I get bastardize these living costs to the bare minimum so that I could still be happy, and then how can I match those living costs? And it wasn't actually that much. So I had to get to that point. The magical thing is when you do get to that point and you do become, in a place where you don't need to go to work to do something you don't necessarily enjoy to earn money, you then start realizing you're a magnet to make more money. Like you see more opportunities that you wouldn't have seen before. Your energy changes. You become kind of more caring about, like if you was to create a product, you became more caring about creating a product or helping someone. And they're like, why have you helped me? And they want to, now they want to pay you for stuff. And it was a
Yeah,
really weird time where I stepped out of a job, started sharing some information about what I'd done at that time. And that was all spurred on by, like, I had an accountant and a financial advisor throughout that business. And then I just left the business one day and they were like, what are you doing? Like, how? And they still work as an accountant and a financial
interesting.
advisor. So
Yeah.
wealth building or financial freedom rarely has much to do with accountancy or managing money. It's a totally different study. So that's what I did. And I started like sharing some information. Then people were like, oh, can I pay you to do a Skype call? And can I do a Skype session? I'm like, what? It's crazy. So I started sharing everything online for free. And as a result of that, it just went nuts. We built a phenomenal community and people kind of want to pay you more and more money, which is it's crazy.
It's such a great place to be. And I love the fact that it's just come from a place of, I'm just going to share everything that I have
Yeah.
done, that I have learned. So, that first year of trading, how did you go about learning yourself before you started
Yeah.
to take this and teach other people? Like, where did you learn that from?
Yeah, that was the hardest. And that whole transition phase was when, like, I think I was probably the closest I came to a divorce, and my wife's family would say, what's he doing? Kind of everyone just thought I was nuts. Because when I got into trading, it wasn't as mainstream as it is now. There was a couple of people talking about it, but
So, they were
it was so
judging
long
you?
ago that you didn't have Instagram traders and
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
flaunting Lamborghinis. So I luckily, I did buy a couple of courses and I fell for a couple of scams and signal services and all that. But I was lucky enough to know a guy called Clive, who was an institutional trader who didn't live too far from me. And although he couldn't teach me how to trade, because how a retail trader trades and an institutional trader trades totally different. You
Yeah.
can't copy them because they move the market and we don't. We ride the wave. So he kind of just said, look, this is the kind of thing that happens about twice a week. It happens on this market and this market. He tried to kind of give me as close as possible to catching that move. And he said, your job now is to build some board game instructions around how to catch that every time. So, and I said, what do you mean board game instructions? And he says, well, they have to be so consistent that you do it every time and there's no argument, so that the result is always the same. And I said, okay. So I spent like hours, tens and tens of hours, like testing historical markets until I got this strategy down and I tested it and verified it. And then I was like, wow, this is, this produces X amount of percent per year. This is already looking promising. Started trading it, learned, some lessons that were slightly different in the live market than they were from historical testing, got through that phase. And then it just became a love of like developing systems and developing strategies and refining them and optimizing them for better reward to risk profiles and higher strike rates and, dynamic entries. And it just became like, I was just geeking out.
I was
I'm a
just gonna say,
tech
yeah,
geek.
geeking
Like
out.
I'm a
Yeah.
spreadsheet geek. So all of this stuff was just, it didn't feel like work. And I was in a couple of communities that were really good. I mean, when I first started going as a professional, after I'd done all the work and done all the testing, I went live. And 4 weeks later, I had less money in my account than I started with. But it was only because I was in that community that they said, like, keep going. Remember, it's consistency over time. On the 5th week was when I went into new equity highs, new profits in my account. And that was the point where I 100% trusted my system. Until then, I was still a little bit, maybe it won't work anymore. Maybe it worked historically, but it doesn't work anymore. And then I got that, and it was just like, wow, if you just stick to a plan and you're process over outcome driven, then it's amazing. It works. And that is emotionally much easier said than done.
I was just gonna
Trading will
say,
demand more of you than any other self-development program I've ever done.
yeah.
You learn more about yourself trading than anything, honestly.
What kind of emotions did you have to navigate over that journey?
Being wrong. So I'm wrong still to this day 4.2 times out of 10, and that's okay. If I was wrong 7 times out of 10, I might not be able to stomach that. Some people are. I've got a friend called Siam, and he happily swings the bat, and he's wrong most of the time. But because he's right that once, he has like a huge reward to risk profile, and he's all right. And that's the way he lives. And to me, that's chaotic, and I don't want that volatility in my net worth. So for me, it's about finding your sweet spot in how often you're wrong over how often you're right. The other thing is fear of leaving money on the table, fear of missing out on trades, fear of, all of these things. And then let's just say that you make a mistake. Then it's like, well, if you lose money because you took a mistake, then don't revenge trade, don't try and make up the profits, because then you're driven by emotion and everything just has to be board game instructions. So, all of these things. And you're just looking in the mirror at yourself. No one else cares if you're profitable at trading or not. No one else is going to make it better. There's no one else. You can't blame Keir Starmer. You can't blame your staff pinching out of the till. It's just you. And that's the hardest thing. It's like, it's only me that's going to make this profitable. Some people are profitable, some people aren't. I want to be profitable. And the reason I'm not is because of me. And that's, you have to swallow that. And once you do, that's when you can start building some profit.
And I think that's a big difference between what I see and observe, having worked in financial services for 20 years and predominantly in a very male-driven environment, right? Is that trading, investing is incredibly psychological. And I think for a lot of men, because typically, and I am, kind of putting people into boxes with this statement, but typically we know that men are more confident when it comes to taking risks in investments. And when I think about women and the confidence piece, I do think that is a big contributor to why men are kind of a bit more gung-ho and a bit more, I'll just give it a go and see what happens. And actually I've seen that in my own children. My youngest son, who is 11 years old, he decided by himself, just from overhearing a conversation I was having with my husband about cryptocurrency. And as a family, we decided to move 5% of our asset allocation, what we had invested in the markets, into crypto and into the digital space. And I recorded actually a whole episode on this, which I'll link in the show notes. And he overheard this conversation and he was like, Mum, can I just put half of the money that's sitting in my Starling bank pot, which is like all his accumulation of birthday money, and can I invest it in crypto? We were like, sure. And last night he was on his app. We've got our crypto on a ledger, and he's got this little app on our phone. And he was like, I've made like 42% in the last like 3 days. And it was so interesting because, for him and having that experience in a very volatile asset is great because it exposes him to, a lot of volatility. And I
Yeah.
know that trading, I guess from a risk perspective, is something that does sit higher up on the risk scale. And I'm going to ask you a question about that in a second. But I do think that that confidence and that conviction does have a lot to do with keeping that consistency and having that kind of self backing behind you that, well, this might not work, but it might kind of approach.
Yeah, I think your ability to take risks and calculated risks comes from confidence, and confidence a lot of the time is skewed unjustifiably, so that your fear is unjustifiable. So
Mm.
an example that kind of maybe people can relate to more that isn't trading related, and you'll see how it fits in a minute, is imagine you come home one day and you find your partner cheating on you, right? And at the moment, it's like the worst thing in the world that happened to you. And you might have a fear on going dating again and getting out into that scene, or fear of trusting men or women or whatever it was. And you might have a trust issue, you might have a fear. And then 20 years later, I might ask you, was that the worst thing that ever happened? And you'd probably say, no, it was the best thing. It was the best thing that ever happened because I met this person, had these kids, did this, got this life, got this house, all this rest of it, right? So imagine if it didn't take 20 years. And imagine if you just saw the event for what it was back then, because that fear that you had at the point of time that it happened, stopping you from going forward, was unjustified. You was over egging it. You was giving it more credit than it deserved, right? It was just a thing that happened, and you got a load of lessons from it, and the good came out of it, right? So something I've practiced all my life is seeing the good, seeing the lessons, right? So if you, and this works both ways, if you make a load of money, I had my biggest trading day ever on the 3rd of April 2020, just as we was going into lockdown. And it was a lot of uncertainty. And I had this massive trading day, and I felt a little bit cocky. I felt a bit cocky. So I closed my trading account down, and I said, I'm not going to day trade anymore. And all I'm going to do for the next few days is see all the negative things that I did, try and make sure that I didn't make any mistakes. Like I was almost trying to bring it down so that it was just a thing, right? And I tried to neutralize the emotions. And the same goes for when you lose money. It's like, well, did I make a mistake? Yes. Well, what has that cost me? This much. Well, what has it earned me in the future? What are all the things, the lessons that I've learned that was going to stop me from doing that? Not only stop me, but make money as a result of not doing that. And you kind of have to see events for what they are rather than just give them more fantasy than they deserve, or more depression than they deserve,
Yeah.
if that makes
And
sense. Yeah.
it's that
So that's the
expectation,
key.
isn't it? It's like on paper, the money's going up and down, but actually, so is a lot of other things that we hold, property and all those other things. And I think that, yeah, definitely having that skill set to be able to go, well, what's the opportunity cost? What have I learned from this experience? And I think confidence is a big part of that. And
Yeah.
what are the other important skills if someone's listening to this and is thinking, okay, I'd quite like to learn some of this myself.
Trading.
Yeah, or trading, investing, like what do you
Yeah.
think are the most important other skills to develop first before you start going
Um,
down this road?
I mean, in any endeavor like this, you need to have a value on wealth building. You need to have a value on money and respect money. And you need to be a great risk manager. You need to focus on not losing money. And then as a byproduct of that, you'll earn money. And that's really what trading is. It's the same with poker. It's the same with anything. You have a plan to not lose money and manage it well, and then you'll make money. The people we find do most well naturally are process oriented thinkers. So not people that are chasing the result, but actually are, if I do this, this, and this, I'll get X result. People like engineers, um, people like IT, people who are in the military, people who are, that type of ilk, accountancy, you know, uh, I don't know, who all of your audience are, but what I've found with accountancy, not accountancy, yeah, accountancies, conventional accountants, they are very risk averse. Like they're very they don't want to take any risks, and they're very much, well, I can't handle that volatility, that fluctuation, and I've seen a few cases where accountants have struggled, and but then I've seen cases where accountants are brilliant because they're so spreadsheet driven. They're like, well, if I just keep doing that, I'll do that. And if you are emotionally triggered between the two of those examples, it's probably because you just got too much in the pot, and you just haven't earned your right to that level of risk. So if you just take some back, you might find that you're all right. But it's typically people who are just process over outcome, people who are binary, ones and zeros, and then you get this. And I think that those are the best people, and people that are poised and also in a financial situation to be able to do it. So trading is the last thing you want to do. It's not the first thing. The first thing is a savings account. The second thing is an index fund. The third thing is maybe a large cap stock. The last thing is crypto, right? But somewhere in between then is trading, I would say. I always say, imagine like your net worth as a pyramid, and on this pyramid is your net worth, and this pyramid is your investments, and you want to directly allocate, like proportionately to your investments, based on how much knowledge you've got on each of those things. Like if you're being kept up at night by your Bitcoin app, you've got too much in there, or you don't know enough about it. Like that's it. So reduce it, and put it into something you know more about. And then you might go, do you know what? I really want to learn more about this Bitcoin thing. And you go on a rabbit hole and you immerse yourself, and you go from 1% to 5% or 7%, and you're like, all right, now it's not affecting my sleep. And Bitcoin's a funny one, because look at the chart of Bitcoin. It's only ever gone up, right? It's only gone up. You look at the start date and today, and it's a directional line. Yes, it's moved up and down, but it's only ever gone up. So why have thousands of people lost money on Bitcoin? Why? Because their mindset can't handle the little dips.
Yeah.
They don't believe in it. They don't trust it. They don't understand it. And therefore, or they've put too much in. And now they're watching their net worth go down by 50% or 40% or whatever they can stomach. And they go, I can't take anymore. It's too painful. They pull it out, take a loss, Bitcoin rallies. If you try to grow your money faster than a rate your mindset can keep up with, your mind will be the thing that squanders your money. So you want to build a proportionate allocation based on your knowledge. And then if you don't understand any of it, the first investment you should make is in your knowledge. You go and pay to learn, and that is it.
So if somebody's typically got, I don't know, let's say they've got 10 grand in the bank and they want to distribute in according to that allocation, what would you suggest how would they distribute that between savings, things like ETFs, investments, trading?
Sure. If you're completely uninitiated and you know nothing about investing or trading or anything, without this being financial advice, think about how you manage the risk. If you look at an index fund, for instance, that is 500 of the top performing companies in the world, managed by the brightest minds on the planet. And they're all in this table like the Premier League, where there's a relegation zone, and, the Premier League, and that's all managed by brightest minds on the planet as well. You can own a sliver of every one of those companies that are in different sectors, different classes, different, that you're diversified across all those great performing companies. And that has produced 7 to 10% per year since inception. Well, that's great. What's the alternative? It's better than putting it in your savings account, right? It's better than getting 1% a year. What's the alternative? And then people say, Bitcoin. Okay, put everything in Bitcoin and see what happens. And they put everything in Bitcoin. Oh, I lost money on Bitcoin.
Please
Why?
don't do that.
It's only gone up. So I know I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit, but I've spoken. This is so important. You don't invest in anything you don't understand. Index funds, you're diversified across all the risk, all the sectors, all the different companies. Because you might just say, oh, do you know what? I'm going to buy one company, and then guess what? If the company goes down, so does your net worth. So then you go.
Jason, but anyone's not heard of the term index fund, can you just also explain that for our listeners as well?
So an index fund is a pool of companies that are grouped together as a fund, and you invest in the fund. You own a tiny piece of each of those, and the fund is managed by, say, Vanguard or someone like that, and you can invest in that fund. So they're doing all the legwork. You're still getting a great return, and it's very passive, and you don't have to worry about it, right? You don't have to learn much about it, and it's very automated. So yeah, you pick one company, your money goes down, then you say, oh, do you know what? I'll buy JVC and Nokia and Samsung and Apple and you pick 5 companies to diversify. Well, they're all tech companies. So now if the technology sector dips, so does your net worth, right? So the idea is by buying an index fund, you're buying all different companies, all different sectors, and then you're diversified across all, so that it's weatherproof. It weathers a storm, because when the techs are booming or crashing, agriculture might be doing well, or pharmaceutical might be doing well, and so on. And you've got all of that in there. And then the next problem is, don't try to time it. Don't try and buy the bottom. Key is just to, Benjamin Graham, who was Warren Buffett's mentor, says, buy your stocks like groceries and not perfume. And that's a great saying, because when you perfume, you're picky. You might go from long periods of time without getting it and get different ones. But your groceries, you buy every week, every week, every week. So if you're buying the index fund every week, you're approximating the mean growth of the market, which is what most people can't outperform. So even when it's crashing, in fact, when it's crashing, you want to consider increasing your regular deposits, and then holding it back when we're over inflated, and then distributing accordingly. So there's all strategies around that, but that's such a great underused strategy that just people just don't
It
use.
totally is. It's one of my favorites. It's like, when we buy clothes, you want to buy them in the sale. So when the markets are going down, you want to be putting more in, right? But again, that comes back to confidence, or not following the crowds. And, Warren Buffett typically historically talked about, being fearful when the markets are greedy, and be greedy when the markets are fearful, and I think that all comes back to confidence. And as you said, Jason, understanding what you're investing in. And I know you talk about this on your YouTube channel and in your book about, you can, if you wanted to go and explore trading, you can set up virtual trading accounts, right? So you can pretend that you are actually investing without actually investing, which I think is a great way.
The beauty of trading, right, it's one of the only businesses in the world that's not, like, it is not risky, because you don't have to spend a penny before you've proven that you can be profitable. And then even when you go profitable, you can put like 100 quid in it or something, it's like and there's no external influences, there's no members of staff, there's nothing. So you've got full control of this business, that you can prove a business plan historically using data, which you can't do in any other business. It's just kind of a pinch of salt kind of thing. And then all you have to do is mimic that plan, that business plan going forward. And then you can just start small, and then when you get the confidence, and this is what you should do, when you get the confidence, you like, right, I want to put as much as I can into this, because you've earned that confidence. But most people just chuck everything they've got in, and then like click buy or sell, and then just hope. There's no need to do that. It's like the least riskiest business out there. It's so funny.
I just think, I think for the majority of people, going back to that, having enough in savings, making sure that that's protected, you've got that accessible, even things like insurances come into that as well, to make sure that if you can't work, that you've got something to fall back on. I think that's the important piece with investing, is that you can't build a strong investment platform if you've got weak foundations.
No, do you know what? I think that you're spot on, but I think the only reason people mess up with investments, or trying to make good investments, is because they're trying to escape the life that they're in. That's it. They're trying to get somewhere quicker. And if you're trying to get somewhere quicker, you need to look at your life, and really get back to doing what you want to do. And this kind of ties back to the book, because I got asked the other day about, I've got no goals. I've got no aspirations whatsoever. I just want to live every day like this. And if I die doing this, amazing, very content, very happy. Because of that, I'm able to make very sensible decisions and investments, because I'm not trying to, I need to get out of this, I need to get out of there quicker. I was in that position once, and I totally understand it. Maybe it's because I was an engineer that I had this logical kind of way of approaching it. But if you've got to escape your life, you'll get more freedom from reevaluating your life and figuring out how to do what you love than you will putting some money into an investment. You'll feel more free from doing things you enjoy than you will some money that's going to allow you to, sit bored on a beach for a week, and then you've got to go and figure out how to do something else. I don't know.
That for me just beautifully winds us up to the final question that I would love to hear your answer to, Jason, which is, this show is called It's Not About the Money. So when it's not about the money for you, what is it really about?
It is about living. So when you were 7 years old, right, you had all the freedom in the world, and you would probably just be spending your days or weekends playing football or doing the on your bike, skateboard, playing marbles in my childhood, right? You had all the freedom in the world. And then when your mum used to call you in and go, you got to come and have a shower now, you got to get ready for bed and all this, right? You used to think, when I'm an adult, I'm going to be free. No one's going to tell me what to do. No one can tell me what to go to bed, right? And then when you become an adult, you move further and further away from freedom and further away from who you were as that 7-year-old, right? Who arguably knew themselves better than anyone. And there was a period of time when I was in 2012, when I went to Disney, we went up to the ticket kiosk to go into the park. And this old boy, 70 years old, probably, he worked there, and he clamped the ticket and he went, "Go and be a kid again." And I remember looking at everyone thinking, that is really what everyone wants. That's what everyone wants. So my goal, when money doesn't matter, money is an enabler, and it provides security. It allows you to be in a position when you can really just continue to be 7 years old for the rest of your life. And that's, to me, that's it. I just want to sit here and play guitar and make some music, spend some time with my family and just tinker about. That's it.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I just wanted to finish with saying I had the very fortunate position of being able to get an advanced copy of this book, which will be out already by the time this episode airs. So I do really encourage you to go and buy Jason's book, always free. It's full of wonderful gems all the way through from money mindset, all the way through to how to work out your financial freedom number, which I think is an exercise that everybody should know how to do, all the way through to how to accumulate wealth, and just so many lessons along the way. So congratulations to you, Jason, on your book. I know that this is going to change a lot of people's lives. So thank you for taking the time. And I know you've spent a lot of time, years of your knowledge and experiences have gone into this book. So congratulations to you. And
Thank you
for
very much. And thanks for having me on.
You're so welcome. I will pop a link as well in the notes under here to Jason's YouTube channel. Please go and check out his material on there. It is fabulous. And also let me know, if you're watching this on YouTube yourself, comment below, what is your biggest takeaway from this conversation? What are you inspired to go and do having listened to this conversation? And if you're listening on the podcast, drop me a message on Instagram, Catherine Morgan Money. Thank you so much for listening. And I will see you again on the show next Monday.